Hello and welcome to Build Back Better, a series of online conversations from For the Region about the future of South West Wales. Today's roundtable conversation is about the subject of returning to work. As the Welsh Government starts to ease the lockdown and encourage more of us to get back to work, we're speaking to some of the region's major employers, including BT, Avato, JCP Solicitors and Bevan and Buckland. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. There are lots of insights from those organisations about how they're overcoming some of the challenges and obstacles in getting their teams back to work, and reflections on what they've learnt and some of the value that's come out of this experience to enable them to build back better in their organisations and collectively as a region as we go forward. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to the second of For the Region's online series, Build Back Better. We're delighted to welcome some large employers from across the region to join us for a conversation about getting back to work. We're looking at having a discussion about what in the world of work and business has changed and what are our ambitions for getting back to some normality or some new ideas about building back better. I'd like to welcome Hayley Davies, who's Director of JCP Solicitors, Ben Coscain, Programme Director from BT, Alison Vickers from Bevan and Buckland, Emma Bloomfield from Avato. I'm Zoe Antrobus from For the Region, and this is my colleague and host, Dawn Lyle.
Oh, thanks, Zoe. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us this morning to talk about the return to work. As Zoe has said, in your worlds, the return is already underway, and some of you have been working in your offices all the way through this lockdown and the pandemic so far. So we're really excited to hear sort of your insights and your perspective, and particularly in relation to what's changed and what needs to change as we all get back to work. You know, the first thing to talk about probably is the immediate concerns. Welsh Government are gradually announcing the reopening of non-essential shops and businesses and encouraging people to get back to work and to do so safely. I'll start with you, Hayley. You said you've been coming into your office at JCP from the beginning. Any prospect of your colleagues coming back to work in the office? What are your immediate concerns in the short term?
Well, I think like everybody, the main concern is ensuring that we can bring them back to a safe working environment. We have been very clear from the outset that we're not going to rush back to our offices, bearing in mind that we've got 9 premises that we have to prepare for a safe return. So from our perspective, it's looking at how we can achieve that in the best way possible. We are talking to our team members all of the time to ensure that they are on board for returning as well. And we've just recently sent out a staff survey where we've asked a number of different questions, but the main theme being, how has it been for you? And what do you think the future will entail if you had a choice as to what you do next? So whilst I can't share the feedback from that with you because we're still analysing a lot of the data, that will help us to shape our return to office.
What's your general sense, Hayley? Do you think people are, chomping at the bit to get back into the office? Or do you think more people will want to work from home going forward? What's your general sense of the mood?
There's a huge difference across our team members, bearing in mind that we've got a range of ages, a range of genders, a range of different roles that make it more difficult to try and work from home. Equally, we've got some employees that have got childcare issues that is going to dictate whether they are able to come back to the office, regardless of whether they want to be in the office or not. So there's a huge range. Majority, I think, want to come back. But we also know from initial findings that there's a lot of anxiety about coming back as well, in terms of knowing that they will be safe.
And I could bring you in, Alison, on this as well, because similarly to JCP, Bevan and Buckland have a lot of office-based staff. What are your immediate concerns and challenges, and how are you going to bring people back to work?
It was a couple of things. Yes, safety is always going to be first, but the mental health of our staff as well. We've already completed the sort of the survey of what staff wanted. It went out a couple of weeks ago, so I have got the answer, the responses, not the answers. Not that if only I knew the answers, but I have certainly got the responses. What we found, about a third of our Swansea-based staff wanted to come back and be permanently based back in the office. We had about 25% said they were happy to be permanently based at home, and the rest then wanted to be able to access the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week and have a real mixture. So what we've done, the office has been open throughout. So we've had our reception open, we've been open to receive clients' books and records, people dropping things in. It's been done in a very structured way, so they had to book an appointment. We've got 3 downstairs sort of meeting rooms. So 3 days a week, they would drop the books into sort of the relevant meeting room where the information would sit there for 3 days before anybody accessed it. So we had a very sort of process-driven approach to that. But the staff, we found that some are really keen to come back in. So we've already it's crept up from having 2 or 3 staff in to currently we've got 9 working in the office. We put screens up, hand sanitizer stations. We've moved the desks around so that they're sitting at least 2 meters apart and not facing each other. So we've restructured quite a lot. And so we've got the permanent staff, we've got their space, the ones who want to permanently be based in the office. The ones on rota then, obviously, you can't sit at a desk that someone sat at the day before, so we've had to bring all of that into it. But we're surprised how many wanted to be permanently based in the office. We thought they may want a little bit more of a variety, but they're really keen to get back to some sort of contact, I felt.
Yeah, I think some of the novelty of working from home has worn off, and of course the challenge of juggling childcare and everything else. But it must be strange, working socially distanced when you're used to all getting together for a cup of tea in the kitchen and chatting over lunch. It's a whole new culture. Does it feel weird?
It is weird. So what we've done, we set up mini pods, as we called it, because and we tried to put sort of friendship groups together. And what we've said is speak to each other, have your little 10-minute chat over lunch, but do it through some sort of Teams meeting we tend to use, some sort of Teams format, so that you can catch up. And then we've got a sort of someone in charge of the mini pod who does a little social call every couple of days to make sure, is that person coping? Are there any problems? How are they feeling in themselves as well as the workload? So, and that's worked quite well. So we've tried to do things. We had a quiz about a virtual pub name. We've had a retirement party online. We've had other quizzes, just general quizzes, just to keep them feeling part of the team.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. It's so important to think about the well-being, and as large employers in our region, I know you take that really seriously, and it's all the more important now. Ben, you're responsible really for all the work that goes on inside the BT Tower in Swansea City Centre. So what is that, an 11 or 12 story building, and you employ a huge number of people from that site. What's been going on with you, and what does the short-term future look like at BT?
Yeah, so I think we've probably got about 450 people we would potentially normally have in the Swansea Tower. We've probably now got probably over 100 people in there at the moment. I think the challenge, as you say, is it's an 11-floor building, and I think what we've tried to do is be quite flexible. Again, one of the things we did very early of our staff is kind of ask firstly, who wants to work from home. I think it's a combination of who wants to work from home, who can. Clearly people need to have the right kind of facilities, space at home, the right, for example, connectivity, broadband. Somebody potentially in a small house with children running around. Certainly for our contact centre, that's probably not an area they would feel comfortable working in. And, clearly as well, we have to adhere to certain things around privacy, having conversations with customers, that type of thing. So I think we've had to, adapt very quickly, and I think, very similar to what other people have said on the call, really, is, making sure that our office environments are safe, that we've put the right facilities in place, ensuring, distancing. I mean, I guess in simple terms, generally a bank of 6 desks has become a bank of 3 desks. Really what we've also looked to do is make sure we move what I would deem as non-essential people out of the building. So, we've kind of prioritized our buildings where we need to put our kind of contact centers in, where those people can, and other people, really what I deem the support teams. It's probably been easier for those guys to kind of work from home. But again, even for our contact center guys as well, there's a lot of, working together in teams, having a manager supporting them, etc. It's quite a transition that we've obviously had to, use new technology, allow people to kind of, use things like Skype messaging where they need to reach out to a manager to support them on a call. So it's been an interesting challenge, but I think, something that people have stepped up to. And I guess now that initial period has passed, it's trying to work out, right, well, what next?
Yeah, I suppose that in the immediate period of lockdown, online connectivity became really important for a lot of people. So did you see that at BT, a big rise in the number of people making contact? And I suppose you had to sort of step into that role as more and more people needed to be able to have online meetings and work from home.
I think it's interesting, and I should have probably had the stat to hand, but I know quite a few of our technology guys have come out to say, despite what everyone would see as a demand, the network has held really well, and even in the daytime, it's still, and don't quote me on this, but there was still something like, it was still lower, like 75% of what we would see generally as a spike. Normally for us, that big spike is probably 6 o'clock onwards. People are getting home, suddenly the whole household has got multiple devices. And I guess, speaking, I guess from all providers' perspective, but certainly, from a BT side, we're, really, really happy actually, because the network has held up, which has enabled us to do things like this. People have been able to very quickly, work in a different way and, adjust. And, it's good to see that people have embraced video calling, really. I mean, that, I think it's a strange one, really, because I think we're all used to sitting in a room together. I think some people have taken a little bit longer, the idea of turning on a camera at home. But I think it's becoming the norm a lot more, which is, personally for me, a good thing, because, it's using technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a massive shift online, and people get much more used to these things that used to feel more daunting, chatting on these rooms. And you say the internet's held up pretty well, and touch wood, you haven't just jinxed it for our call today, because we've all become so dependent, haven't we, on that connectivity, much more so than we were before. I'd like to bring Emma in, Emma Bloomfield from Arvato, Shared Services Company. What's been going on for you, Emma, and what's happening in terms of bringing your teams back into the office now?
Well, it's been an extremely busy period, which it has been for everybody. Myself being the facilities manager, so I've been preparing the building, getting it ready, getting it safe, putting in the social distancing for staff measures. We have no plans at the moment to bring people back, so that there is no rush. So there's quite a lot of adaptation in the building. So our reception area is closed. Our building is run by access control anyway, so to get into the building you have to have a valid pass. The reception area, we've got turnstiles to get into the actual building itself. So we've had to disconnect the hand scanners, because that's classed as a multi-touch point, so to reduce any likelihood of any potential spread. So we still have the turnstiles to access, but they are automated. We've got floor markers everywhere, we've got signs everywhere, we've got the same as BT, so we've reduced desks down from 8, banks of 8 down to 4. The lift, we've only got a 2-story building, but I mean, our lift is only suitable for 1 person, so it's definitely not as bad as what they've got in BT. Yeah, so we've got hand sanitizer stations everywhere, we've got antibacterial wipes everywhere, we've had to cordon off areas in the toilets as well to make sure that we don't have any queues or anything. So it's been a very busy time, very interesting. But we'll see as well if anything else changes with it, since we put everything into place, if there's going to be any further changes with the government guidelines before people come back. What else do we need to change?
I think space as well for lots of businesses is quite a big issue, even in corridors and everything. To create that one-way system is a really difficult, Arvato is quite a big office space,
Yes,
You have got
we're
lots of
open
room.
plan as well.
Yeah, so you're able to sort of create that one-way system. But lots of businesses going forward work in much smaller environments, and it's going to be quite difficult for them.
I think with the older buildings as well, so you've got, you know, the modular offices, you've got the narrower corridors. I think we are lucky that we don't have that. But yeah, it's going to be quite challenging for the older buildings.
Yeah, interesting, the challenges that different businesses will face, but it's also true, I think, that for those of us in sort of professional services, it's one of the sectors that has been able to keep going through this period of lockdown and adapt quite well in the short term. I mean, looking forward now, and I'll come to you, Hayley, and see what you think, but you know, once this immediate transition is over and we settle into whatever people are calling the new normal, what do you think the lasting impact of lockdown and all this pandemic crisis will be? You know, when we look back on this experience in a couple of years' time or in 5 years' time, what will we think of as the lasting impacts and sort of changes to the way we live and work long term?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, from our perspective, I hope we will look back on it and not just remember all the really awful times that we've been through, but the positives that have come out of it as well. And I think from JCP's perspective, and I appreciate that we have all got different viewpoints, but from JCP's perspective, we feel that we will come out of this stronger in the long run. Our culture has actually been positively impacted throughout the lockdown, ironically. I mean, people talk about feeling closer than ever, even though we're so far apart, because, you know, we're really doing so much more over and above perhaps what we would have done previously to ensure that people don't feel isolated and disconnected from the business. So that's a big thing, ensuring that we can hold on to that. And also the ability to have the flexibility for people to work, not necessarily work from home, you know, as a permanent measure. That's not something that I think for JCP would be a way forward, but just knowing that people can have the confidence to be able to work at home, where prior to lockdown, they never thought that was an option. And it's the digital working really that has driven that at a pace perhaps faster than anybody could have expected. And from our point of view, we think that we can embrace that. In fact, we've made a pledge that we are going to not go back to the way it was. We are going to drive forward with some of the major digital changes and take this as the opportunity to start that process.
What sorts of digital changes are you talking about? The sort of meeting with clients and that sort of thing?
Combination of things. I mean, the meeting with clients is one thing, although you can't beat a face-to-face meeting no matter how great the technology is, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. But from our point of view specifically, it's about the paper-based work that we have continued to work with for a very long time. As a law firm, you know, we've been dictated to by numerous organisations and regulations in terms of what we can and can't do. And going forward, the experience that we've had over lockdown is that other organisations have had to actually move forward and allow us to do more digitally. And, you know, we've got to capture that and take that forward.
That sounds like a good opportunity. And I'm hearing that from a number of sectors. It's sped up the process of going digital. Alison, what do you think, looking back on this experience in 5 years' time, what will be the lasting impacts, do you think, from your perspective?
Communication. So what we've found is the way we communicate with clients and the way we hold meetings. I agree to an extent that it's really good to have face-to-face meetings, but for quick catch-ups, and we'll certainly when we do audits, we'll have a pre-planning meeting and so on, and we could end up driving to Cardiff for an hour's meeting, and all of those have been done on Zoom or Teams, and they've been fantastic. So what we feel is that communication, we've introduced it, and we did a weekly comms communication meeting. We now do it daily. All the team come on to Teams, and that's worked really well. It keeps them informed, keeps them up to date. So it's the way we transact. One of the big themes we've taken through all of this is lessons learned. So what can we learn? Luckily enough, we'd gone digital with all our working papers about a year or so ago. which has made the transition so much easier. So everything's there. I access client data sort of at a sort of push of a button. So that's been a real win, but we'd already adopted that. We've certainly seen the culture of our office be really positively impacted. And what we've found is that people will see it as more one team. We've been trying to sort of change our culture. You're all one team, you're in this together. And this has cemented it. So, for example, my audit team now, they speak 2 or 3 days a week. They're all on that. And they're all, how can they help with that audit? Can they offer us services there? And it's been fantastic, that is. So that's been a real win. So a couple of things is the way we communicate and how we work as a team, and just keep the momentum going for our digital files, if you like. You know, we saw that, so we were there anyway, just keep that going.
And what you've talked about there with less travel to meetings, that obviously has an impact on road use and car use as well. And if you're saying a third of your team are thinking that they'll work from home permanently, do you think there's opportunity to capture those gains? And what's parking like around your sites? Is this helping?
Oh, helping majorly. Parking is a nightmare in SA1. They were sort of reducing the amount of permits or the areas where you could permit park. We had limited parking spaces. It was always a discussion. Should we say discussion point is the easiest way to call it in the office? It was always on the agenda. So what we've said now is, with only, you know, a third of the staff, so about 20 odd people coming in permanently and the rest on rota, we could actually accommodate the parking a lot easier. And so things like that will be an absolute win for us, and a win for the staff. They have less commuting time. I'm currently saving an hour and 10 minutes every day by coming into a different room in the house. But so we're seeing commuting time saved, costs of commuting saved, costs of parking, and it's positive for the environment. So we've seen a big win there.
I don't know if this rings true for you, but I find in conversations with professionals and business people who could potentially cycle to work or even walk to work or leave the car and use public transport, the main reason for needing to drive to work is quite often because you need your car to go out to meetings during the day.
Yeah.
And I think if we're removing a lot of that requirement and doing more of our meetings digitally, I think perhaps more of us can seriously think about, do we need to take the car to work, or could we find an alternative means of travel, given that it's only the to and from work journey and not needing to travel for meetings?
Absolutely. And that was one of the arguments staff always said, well, we need vehicles because we go out to clients so much. So if you then say we've got to get a different means, how are we going to get to these client meetings? So if they're suddenly halved, or, you know, even more so, then it puts a different sort of complexion on how they use their cars and how they get to work.
As you're the accountant among us, Alison, can I ask you what you think in terms of the economic impact? Obviously, this is a massive question, but what's your perspective so far, and what do you think the longer term impacts will be for your clients? What sort of themes are you seeing emerging, but particularly over the longer term?
If I touch on the current at the moment, lots of our clients, in fact, you know, I'm going to say touch wood, no client has gone under yet, so that no one's stopped operating. I'll use that word rather than trading, because lots of them have stopped trading at the minute because they've just stopped operating. There's been some really good, you know, between the furlough, the CBILS, the bounce back loans, the grants, the deferring of the VAT. There's a, you know, whole tranche of support out there, which has been fantastic and has kept those businesses going. There are some people who fell through every net, if you like, every sort of support, which is unfortunate. So we have seen some affected, but to date, everybody's moving forward. The repayment sort of been deferred for loans and HPs has helped. So all positive to date, but we're really concerned that once the support ends, there's going to be a cliff come in, because if, for example, I've got a really good client who's been very profitable, and then for them to come back on restricted openings and restricted numbers, how is he going to make profit moving forward? And he's saying that's a real challenge, and that's someone who started off on a very profitable base. We have some who have what we call lifestyle companies. They make enough earnings to sort of keep their lifestyle, but without making super profits or being able to retain large surpluses. Those are going to find it really hard. So our concerns are sort of the September, October, November time, where we think there could be a lot of casualties. I think in the long term, things are going to be different. People have learned different ways, so will shopping habits change? The retail sector will make massive changes. I think people will have to adopt on how they get the customer base, and really, and the ones who adopt the better should come up positive at the end. Some, unfortunately, will never be able to adopt, you know, and no matter what they do, their business model perhaps won't work. So we do think there'll be a number of casualties is our concerns, and people will have to relook at what they've got. If you like, start with a blank sheet to think, well, how can we change it and how can we push it forward?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about the opportunities to innovate and spot new opportunities as we go through this and new markets that are emerging. And I know, Emma, you were saying that actually Avato has secured new clients through this process, and there have been new opportunities emerging. It's interesting to hear that perspective. What sort of opportunities have you identified, and how can Avato sort of adapt and grow?
So we're predominantly government working. We've been able to secure and support the PPE supplies, so we participated in that. What we've got now is the track and trace, or the contact tracing system. So it's only a short contract at the moment, but you know, it's a possibility that it could lead on to other business afterwards. Unfortunately, it's been a tricky situation for some, but it has worked a little bit in our favour, the line of work that we do.
And Ben, innovation is key to your role and key to BT's continued growth and development. Do you think innovation and new opportunities are a key way for businesses to look at surviving this experience?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'd even go back to some of the earlier points and say as well, I mean, what we shouldn't lose sight of is this has been a really interesting case study through, you know, no one obviously planned this, but the idea of companies having to change and more people working from home, actually there's a whole ream of really useful data to look back at to see, well, how does this impact productivity if you looked across different sectors and things? And I think it will, you know, actually arm, you know, arguments or discussions going forward. I think certainly innovation is key. I mean, if we look at it, I mean, obviously a big thing for us being involved, just thinking from a company like BT Sport, I mean, the football obviously stopped. Yeah, that had a huge impact for us as a company. We've got studios, and even getting the football back, I mean, I saw the piece, that's something we just worked on, and we've sort of been trialing now, is this idea of watching together. So, you know, if our customers are watching, say, the football on an app, they can, you know, video chat at the same time with you know, a number of friends. So this idea of trying to bring it together, so, you know, people can't go to the pub all summer and watch it, they can't go to the grounds and watch it. So it's trying to find, well, what are the kind of new ways that you can look to innovate? And I think to the previous comments as well, I mean, you know, a personal opinion as well is, you know, companies are going to have to, you know, think quite hard. I mean, you look in the high street, and I've always thought companies like Next have done a good job. I mean, Next seem to have a lot more of their business is actually the fact that people are walking in the store to pick up online orders. But then obviously you've got a footfall in the store then, and obviously, you know, sees other things. So I think there's a lot of that type of innovation. The idea that you know, can't walk around a store set at the moment and just be sort of grabbing everything to look at is quite an alien concept. So I think, you know, people are going to have to look at, well, how, you know, how do you adapt around it? Even for us, you know, we have a big retail presence of our EE stores, which are starting to, you know, reopen now on the high street. But again, putting in place a lot of protective means both for our customers and our staff. And it's just trying to find different ways then at which we can kind of still interact with customers, still allow them to do things, but in a safe manner is going to be, you know, absolutely key for, you know, how the high street, I guess, survives this.
I think that's an opportunity for our city and our region as well, because we have a lot of students coming out of our universities with digital skills, and particularly around content and interactive and virtual reality, I think is sort of a growing sector as well. And we've got all those sorts of skills. So I think if you look for them, there are huge opportunities for businesses to grow into new markets, and it's that adaptability to changing times that ensures the survival of businesses. I mean, John Collins and Partners was around for a long time, Hayley, wasn't it? And I know it's now rebranded as JCP, but it's a business that's stood the test of time. And what do you think are the opportunities?
Well, bearing in mind John Collins and Partners was built on the back of a difficult situation back in the 90s, and we thankfully made it through the challenging times of 2007, 2008. As a law firm, we do have the ability to survive these types of crises from the point of view of we have such a mix of work. We've got a big bag of what we deliver, and in good times certain types of work will flourish, and in bad time other types, and fortunately that's enough to have kept us standing throughout the time. I think for us though, one of the big things I would say is that over the last period of 12, 13 weeks of lockdown, one of the things that we've been particularly keen to do is continue to promote the fact that we are here. You know, normally when you have a crisis, people will cut marketing. It's one of the first things that tends to happen, but we have used our digital marketing to ensure that people know that we're still here, we're still delivering our services in the same way, just from a different location. And we've actually seen quite a large increase in market share from a new client base. And we suspect that that's happened because they are seeing that we are demonstrating that we can still deliver our services and that we haven't just hidden away.
I've heard that from a number of other sectors and businesses as well, where those cautious companies that were deciding to take a back seat during this crisis have lost market share, and those that just went for it and took the opportunity to grow. Sometimes we look at the kind of macroeconomics and what's happening on a global or a national scale, and we think, oh, no one's buying anything, it's all going down the pan. But actually, what always strikes me is that in our own businesses we have a micro economy, and we can always step up our efforts, and I think there'll be winners out of this experience who took the opportunity to grow while others stepped back. But it's tough times to survive. I'd like to bring the conversation on to what Zoe and I are really passionate about, which is resisting the return to business as usual. Business as usual, as much as we want to get back to some sort of normality, we know that was a broken system in lots of ways. And you think about the sort of destruction of the environment and biodiversity loss, but also mental health and work-life balance and inequality and economic exclusion for a lot of people. It was a broken system, and particularly in our region, we need to look at how we build back in a way that puts the well-being of people and the planet and future generations at the heart of what we're doing. And what we're asking is whether we can be really bold in that, whether this disruption to normal life creates an opportunity for large employers in the region and for all of us in our own lifestyles to think, okay, well, I'll resist the urge to sort of pick up where we left off, and this disruption is just what's needed to create those lifestyle shifts that previously seemed impossible. I mean, air travel is one of the big ones, isn't it? That for a long time we've all been arguing that we fly too much and that we should cut air travel, and it seemed impossible, and then within a few short weeks all the planes in the world were grounded. Who would like to come in and talk about how you see opportunities for real progress on some of these issues, whether we're talking about carbon emissions, waste? Access to nature is a big one. I think we've all realised how important it is to be able to get out of the house and into nature, and we've all felt appreciative, those of us who've got gardens and parks nearby. And what about equal opportunities, and really topical at the moment with the killing of George Floyd in America? Race equality is really high on the agenda. Are there things that businesses and organisations should be doing now and need to do now if we do want to build a sort of cleaner and greener and fairer society going forward? Give me a wave if you'd like to come in and contribute on that. Hayley, I'll come back to you.
I just want to pick up on your point about waste, really, and the general contribution to our environment and sustainability. One of the huge things that has become very obvious to us, I mean, it's something we've been conscious about over the years, but become very obvious during lockdown, is the amount of paper that actually gets transacted between various organisations. And having been the person that on a couple of days a week cycles to the office, cycles to the post office, picks up the mail and pops it in my backpack and brings it to the office and scans it into other parts of the fee earning teams, I have been completely shocked at the amount of paper that is needless. you know, the single sheets of paper with just 1 or 2 lines where somebody could quite easily have emailed that rather than put it in the post. And we have taken up an initiative with the local law society to collaborate with other law firms in the first instance to look at how we can work together to say, do you know what, we don't need to do that any longer. We don't want to go back to what was the norm. And I think that will have a massive impact on the ability to help our environment.
My take, I guess, going back to the earlier point is I think this gives us a great opportunity to look and see how this works. I mean, even if I take this session, I mean, before COVID, this session would have probably been face-to-face, but maybe one person might not be able to make it and they've video called in. And that one person would probably struggled a little bit because our infrastructure or the rooms aren't always great for it. But actually, the idea now that everyone's doing these Teams Zoom calls and the fact everyone's sort of dialing, that works. You know, I think we've all seen that, and I certainly know from my own experience that I may have a session in London and I think, is it worth all that travel to go in for an hour? Yet you kind of video call in, but because you're the one person, it doesn't always quite work, and sometimes you end up realizing I'm going to have to just travel in for that. Otherwise, it's too important really to miss. And I think what's been interesting and certainly a big takeaway for myself, and I guess what we're looking at is the nature that everyone is doing it. So by nature of everybody kind of dialing into this, you see how well it works. And then we've cut the fact that none of us have traveled for this session. Certainly from my perspective, a big takeaway to look at going forward. Do we do more of that? But then there are certain sessions I know I miss, for example, the fact that I'm not doing any team building. I'm missing the fact that taking the guys out for a drink or, you know, just doing an activity. You can do certain things, you know, virtually. But, you know, I think that's one area where it's not quite the same.
In some organisations, there's this huge culture of presenteeism where you need to be there at the right time in the morning and you need to stay in the office really late to demonstrate how hard you're working. And it's those kinds of cultures that make professional working life challenging for people who have caring responsibilities and family responsibilities. And actually, there are ways that we can now think about changing the culture to enable people to still work just as hard and make as much contribution as they would make previously, but with more flexibility that actually opens up some of those roles to women and others with caring responsibilities. And I know that's a key opportunity. Alison, what would you like to say on those sorts of how can we build back better?
So a couple of things. We were always flexible in the approach with staff, and having sort of been a partner, had a child, and sort of you've got that responsibility. So I knew all about flexibility, and we've just taken it another step. So what we say to staff now is there's 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. These are your contractual hours. You tell us how you're going to complete those contractual hours. So we've got some who have got husbands who will work shifts and so on. So some weeks they'll work these hours, other weeks they may not work at all, 1 week, extra hours over the next 3 weeks. So we've seen a real change in work patterns. We've got to be mindful with clients and client audits and so on. But certainly that's worked really well. And we've had some really good comments back from staff who said there was no way they could have continued with their job had it not been for our flexibility. And I think we're going to keep that. We were always flexible, as I said, and we're going to keep that extra flexibility moving forward. In terms of things like paper and so on, we'd already gone digital in terms of accounts. Our accounts now get signed through a portal, so clients don't actually physically sign their accounts. Some still want to, and some still want their hardbound copies, and they can get them, believe me. But we're encouraging you click on a button and you approve it through the portal. Emailed pay slips, they're all safe, again, through a safe environment. So we'd already seen huge reductions in things like that. And again, travel, I used to do 500 miles a week, 27,000 miles a year. I'm averaging about 50 miles a week at the moment. So that's been lovely, you know. So I've cut my travel by 90%. So if everybody did that, that would be massive. But yeah. I'm not going to do that. We've got some fantastic staff, and lots of those got childcare issues. So why would I risk losing that member of staff? Why not just be flexible and work with them? And that's worked really well.
Mm.
When it comes to travel, I'm sure lots of people have been dusting off their bicycles and getting the puncture repair kit out and everything. But are businesses ready to receive people coming to work on their bikes? Emma, have you got bike facilities at Avato? So people, is there security places in measure so that people can pull up on their bikes and they're going to be in a safe place?
Yes, we do. We've got our little bike shed. We've also reintroduced the Cycle to Work scheme. So we've had it all along, but just to market it a little bit more, because it also helps with the physical aspect for staff, and also with their mental and well-being. We're lucky that we're situated over in Swansea Vale, so we've got quite a large network of cycle paths around. So, you know, there's some fantastic views, there's some fantastic walks. So, I mean, in that respect, yeah, you know, we're all ready if staff want to take that up, but we'll see when we all get to return, really.
Hayley, you've already dusted off your bike as well, then.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I've forced myself to learn a bike over recent years for the charity stuff that I did. But yes, I've been getting my bike and coming out to the office, trying to cycle at least 2 days a week. It does depend on the days, because some days the mail is a bit too heavy for me to pop in my rucksack and cycle to the office. But we've got shower facilities here, we've got the bike racks. Perhaps we haven't gone quite far enough in terms of having covered bike facilities. So that's something that our staff have asked us to look at for all of our offices, because don't forget, it's not just about our Swansea office here at HQ. We've got offices dotted all around South Wales. So it's how we can embrace the same sorts of things for those offices as well.
And to bring us specifically to this really topical issue of race equality, I'm just interested to hear your personal perspectives, really. It's been so shocking and it's shone a new light on an old problem. I know we've got exemplary employers in the room here, but when you're watching the news and some of the reporting, do you reflect on what you can do as a large employer? And, you know, how can we tackle the challenge? Because I think a big part of it, and, you know, Zoe and I run the annual Race Equality Conference in Swansea, and a big part of it is how do we get more BAME individuals in more senior positions within organisations. Looking at John Collins and Partners and Bevan and Buckland, I'm just interested to sort of hear whether you're having conversations about how you individually within your organisations can tackle race representation.
I mean, from our point of view, we've always been very clear. It is not about who the person is, what their gender is, what their beliefs are. It's all about having the right person in the right job at any given time. And all we can do is ensure that we commit to ensuring that everybody has the same opportunity.
Alison, would you like to come in?
I'd exactly echo that. We've certainly got policies to make sure there is no discrimination. We talk actively about that. We've got people from those backgrounds that we employ. So, for example, we employed currently one of my audits, well, my semi-seniors, he's working through his exams, and he wanted time to be able to go into a room and pray at different times of the day. So we've set that up for him. He was very open in the interview. That's what he needed to be able to fulfill his job, and that was absolutely no problem. It is about the right person. It's about the person who can carry out the role. It's the right person for the role. Doesn't matter male, female, what their ethnic background is. It really doesn't. And to me, it's all about the quality that person gives. And if you've got to change and adapt slightly, for example, Abdullah, what we've done there, and we're more than happy to do that because he was the right person for that role then.
And I think it's practical things as well, isn't it? You know, in terms of during recruitment, we learned about the best practice in terms of name blind CVs and taking measures to address our own unconscious bias as well. But it's great to hear that message coming through loud and clear from regional employers, and certainly something we should advocate for as we build back better, that these social and environmental and well-being concerns don't get lost in our race to try and resume business as usual. I'd like to ask for any final thoughts really on the next period of time. I'd like to see what you're looking forward to about getting back to normality, and what you've learned personally from this experience. Ben, can I come to you?
Yeah, I think just look, picking your points up, I think one of the things I found really interesting, and I'm certainly quite proud of from what I saw, and certainly within BT, is look, people generally work quite well in a crisis kind of brings people together. And I certainly found myself, when this first happened, I mean, the hours I was working went through the roof, and we kind of went straight into, right, what on earth's going on? How are we going to manage this? What are we going to do? Let's get a plan, let's form it. And within a period of time, we had 9,000 people working from home, which was quite a logistical challenge to go and do. And I think it's really interesting because you stand back and realize, wow, when you put your mind to it, what can be achieved. And sometimes, you look at that and reflect on other things and sort of think, well, why are some of these other things so complicated or take so long, which is, certainly a reflection from my perspective. I think it's definitely been challenging. I've certainly seen both sides. We've moved a lot of people home. Some people have liked it, some people haven't liked it. It's back to the point of, I think, it's not one size fits all. The reality is there are some people where it's their only real interaction is coming to work, to mix with people. And I think, we need to be really mindful of that. My own view is, I think there's potentially some mental health issues we've really got to make sure we address that could build up, the longer this does go on. I think from a personal perspective, I mean, I've definitely had more family time. We've done a lot more. I think the kids are ready to go back to school. They are definitely ready. I think as parents, we're ready for them to go back to school. But actually, it's just been interesting that, we've had more time to get to do things. Naturally, we've been together, when the start of this, and I kind of treasure that. And I think to this whole point about you were saying about, build back better, I think even from a real personal perspective, a little bit around making sure that we don't lose some of these things. We definitely eat together more. We've done more things by nature of, I'm not off traveling around the country, or my wife's not. And, I think in that perspective of it, it's very easy, and I can see very easy to slip back into those old ways, I think to your earlier point, just around, how businesses operate. So yeah, it's definitely been a period people will look back on, I think, and everyone will have their views on it all.
Emma, what do you think? What are your sort of personal perspective, and what have you learned, and what will you take forward?
It's a big part of my day coming into work, as the social aspect, is the conversation by the coffee area, that's all gone. Having the capabilities, the different platforms that we can use, like Teams, like Zoom, I mean, that's been a great help. Working from home is not for me, but then in my role, I'm lucky that I can come in. So I am lucky that I can come into work. We've got, as I said, we've got about 30 new people downstairs, so I get to see new faces every day. But I know there's a lot of people who are shielding, who are on their own, who are not fortunate, and I can see how that would really affect them. So I do think that mental health is going to be a big contender for people to address if they're not doing it already. But when we start coming back into the office, that you're going to have a lot of people then who are going to suffer from anxiety because they're going to be nervous about coming in.
What you've said there is so important about keeping in touch with our colleagues, isn't it? And checking in and asking them what they want. And I can hear from all of you, the sort of staff wellbeing surveys are a key part of that, but also regular check-ins and making sure we're there to meet the needs of people who are finding this a really difficult time.
Yeah.
And looking at the economy and local businesses and the prospects for companies across our region, one of the themes that comes up a lot is the importance of local sourcing and looking at your supply chains. Alison, have you got anything to share on Bevan and Buckland's commitment to buying local, and have you looked at your supply chains? Because I think there are opportunities in all our supply chains to think, can we support local businesses more as we come through this?
Can I say, it's not only about supporting local businesses, it's supporting our clients as well. So where we can, we use our clients, we absolutely do. That's really vital because, they're using our services and it's important. So they have trust and belief in us, and we need trust and belief in them back. So where we can, we really do use client services. And we're seeing a lot of our clients do actually use local, which I really, really would encourage. So yeah, it's buy local and keep it in the region and build a stronger region, because you are part of that region would be my answer.
Really key message there, and we've talked already today about how this crisis has brought us together, and I think that sense of pulling through this together is going to be really important, and that commitment to buy and sell to each other and from each other, and keep our local economies as strong as we possibly can, and looking at supply chains for that purpose, I think is going to be key. I've enjoyed today's conversation, and I'm grateful to all of you for your contributions. I think it's given us some insight into particularly the world of professional services and the challenges and opportunities that many businesses across our region are grappling with at the moment. And so I'm grateful to you all for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and perspectives on all of that. This has been a roundtable conversation hosted by myself and Zoe For the Region, and we'll be continuing these conversations on a weekly basis to hear from the decision makers, the thought leaders, and the entrepreneurs and businesses who are pulling together and helping our region to build back better as we go forward. So thank you all very much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you in person in the not too far distant future. Thanks all for your time. Bye for now.
Bye.